Now, romance has funny little ways about it. I don't know about you, but it's the way it is. And just so you know, this morning we had to choose the pretty girl to sync the lip syncing. You know, we've seen that somewhere before in the last week. And the ugly one couldn't come on the stage for us, so didn't mind. No, it's the way we think. Beauty's in what you see, not in the power of who we are. I think one of the saddest stories this week was that lip syncing that happened in the opening of the Olympic Games. Because there was this romantic notion that sat there about this cute, pretty little girl, and when people found out it wasn't real, the whole thing just fell apart all around the world. And I want to suggest that in many ways, romance is a lot like that for many people. Romance has different expressions, doesn't it? Different outcomes. And unfortunately, that's the disaster that often happens. Unfortunately, that's the case. And today we'd like to have a look at it. Because you see, most of us are like the two blokes up here early on who were total fatalists. They said, you know, we loved them and we fell in love and all the rest of it. But when we got married, she was Mrs. Right. And then she became always right. And they were telling the young guy that he was going to fall for the same fate. It doesn't need to be like that. But the truth of the matter is most of us are fatalists. And we do it without even realizing. In fact, can I suggest this? It just doesn't just happen. It happens with intention, even if we don't realize it. It happens with intention, even if we don't realize it. Let's have a look at what romance actually is. What is romance? Well, a love, courtship, amor. You know, where you get the word amorous from. You know, being, oh, nice and lovely and, oh, goosebumpy and, you know, the kind of thing. I still remember it. I've been married 33 years. No. But the second part of it is ardent emotional attachment or involvement between people. And it's called love by a lot of people. The trouble is that it's not always understood well by the people who embark on it. We don't even realize why we're doing some of the things we do. I remember when I first met Pauline, I started well. Decided I really liked this girl. So what I did is I decided I'd do something special. And so in those days we never had computers. I know it's a wee while ago, but you know, that's the way it is. And so I got a hunk of wood and some edging, framing, and I got some stuff that some of you have probably never ever heard of. It's called letraset. And each letter you would have to rub off and rub it onto the surface very carefully. Some of you will have seen it. Well, I very carefully wrote her a poem. Now, I borrowed a little bit of material from here and there, but that doesn't matter. The ideas were there. And this is what I wrote. I might be eloquent in many a tongue, but without love my song's unsung. I might be mighty behind the altar, and I didn't know I was going to be a pastor at that stage. But without love I'm like a broken halter. I might be of knowledge and say a lot, but without love I'm like a worthless clot. I might have faith to move the mountains, but without love I'm like blocked up fountains. I might give all away that I could sell, but without love I'm like a fallen bell. Love is patient, love is kind, love is helpful, never blind. Love is eternal, and our Lord, my dear, love is ours for us to share. And I gave it to her, and she thought I was the most fantastic guy on earth. And then she married me. Now, men define relationships in all sorts of ways. And when I ask the question, how do men define the 50-50 relationship, the shared relationship of romance and love? Well, this is how men often define the 50-50. Here's how it goes. They cook, we eat. They clean, we dirty. They iron, we wrinkle. So how does a woman define it? Well, I sat and thought about this for a while because nobody had that part of it. I only vlogged the first part. You see, I suddenly realized I actually don't know how a woman defines 50-50 relationship because I haven't got time. You know? It's a male view. Only Gaynor got the joke. Come on, you guys, that's terrible. After a quarrel, a husband said to his wife, and this is often one of the problems that happens when people they get all romantic, they get married, and then they have fights. And so they say some really dumb things, and one of the things that's been known to be said, and the husband said to the wife, "You know I was a fool when I married you." And she replied, "Yes, dear, but I was in love and I didn't notice." You see, the truth of the matter is that we actually don't even see the weaknesses in each other. And we do often start well. We often start well. You know, my attempts at kind of doing the romance thing really well, I can remember some of the things that I did. I can remember some of the things that we did. You know, we sort of would sit there, and I'd sit, and I was learning to play the guitar, and I wasn't a very good guitar player. I don't even bring my guitar out in front of most guys around here because I'm just not up to the standard. But I'd sit there and struggle away with some chords and figure out the simplest chords to play and then sort of sing a song. And I'd tell Pauline how beautiful she looked and what her eyes looked like and how I loved her hair and the fact that she was shorter than me. No, I never sang that. You know? That was a struggle right from the beginning of our relationship. In fact, when we first started our relationship, we got married, and the day we got married, and we wanted photos, Pauline insisted that we go down to the river to have our photos. Why did she insist to go down the river? Well, if you know the Heathcote River in Christchurch, you'll know why. Because the bank's really steep. She could stand uphill, I could stand downhill, and then we could kiss just for the photos. That's the way it was. Sometimes it's a strength, and sometimes we start to notice things. You see, real romance is actually not just about starting well. Real romance is about much more. See, it's not the heats to the final like we see in the races that have been happening in the competitions in the Olympic Games. You see, if that's what a lot of people see it as. They see it, we're doing the heats right now, and they do get the heats. Really get the heats, some people. Way too much. But afterwards it falls apart. You see, because romance, real romance, is actually much more. It is a marathon with great rewards. But I can tell you now, if you notice some of the racing that's been happening lately, some people just don't make the end of the race. They start out and they don't get there. So we're going to look at the essence of romance. And the essence of romance is great communication. Great communication. But we have a problem. We have a really serious problem. Let's hope this video clip works. If it doesn't, the guy's going to rescue me again. It didn't. Last week it did, but this week it's choosing not to.
In the areas of communication, how are men and women different?
Well, let's start with a little bit of anatomy. We think of the cerebral cortex, which is the front part of the brain where thinking takes place, as being the whole brain. Actually, that's just a part of the brain, but it's the most important part, that gray matter, higher order thinking. That has left and right sides. But there is a piece called the corpus callosum that divides the brain in half, those two hemispheres. The corpus callosum is 14 times larger in women than in men. And what this suggests to some researchers is that women are constantly using the left and the right sides of the brain through verbal interactions to solve all sorts of problems. What that means to communication in marriage is that women are very, very good at talking, and they're very, very good at listening. Men are not so good at talking or listening unless, and that's a proviso, unless they have a certain personality style or they've learned a certain skill set that has enabled them to get better at it. But just based on pure biology, women tend to be better at verbal. They use both sides of the brain to do everything. I think what has to happen for effective communication is for women to give men a break. And I mean a literal break. Men really do want to talk more, but women won't let them. Because I think one reason men don't talk as much, part of it's because they're not as good at it, but part of it is because we don't give them a chance in a warm and loving, respectful atmosphere. Every time they open their mouths, they're wrong. Either they're wrong or you have to one-up them.
I find that intriguing that a woman would say that so strongly. I think she's right. She's done her research. And, one of the things that Pauline and I found is that when we're communicating, sometimes she would speak, and what happened, I withdrew into my shell. And then I'd react. So I'd come busting out of my shell, and it would create conflict. And neither of us really understood what was happening. Both of us loved each other. But we really struggled that first year and a half or so of our marriage. We almost didn't make it because romance went out the window. Poof. Just like that. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says these words. For some reason it's not coming up. There we are. Before their downfall, a person's heart is proud, but humility comes before honor. If you answer before listening, that is your folly and your shame. Now, I'd say both sexes need to think about that. Answer before listening. Talking or not talking, but not listening, and then eventually answering. Now, I've seen the classic case where the guy sits there and says, yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear, yes, dear, as she talks. Yes, dear. He's listening. And at the end of it, she says something to him about, and darling, I'm leaving you tomorrow. Yes, dear, he says. Had no idea that he was even not communicating. He'd locked himself into this thing where he was saying yes, but he wasn't there. He wasn't participating. You see, communication is the key. Really, communication is the key. I want to have a look at men. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I just want to use 2 slides on this, and Dr. John Gray, who wrote the book, I recommend it strongly if you want to help yourselves in terms of your romance. Goes like this. Men are motivated and empowered when they feel needed in a relationship. And feeling needed isn't when you walk in the door, do this, do that, do that. That's not needed. That's demanded upon. Now, I'm not saying the guy shouldn't come in and do those things. I'm saying there's a way about going about it. Men need to feel really needed. And if they turn up at home, and I want to suggest this to you, ladies, if your man turns up at home and your hair's in a disraven mess, you look like you're sloppy as if you've been in the sloppy mess of a job somewhere that doesn't deserve any credit to your body or your looks. I want to tell you now, men are not going to feel like they're needed. It takes but a minute, well, some women an hour, to do the hair and make yourself look a bit better. It really doesn't take that long, honestly. I know my wife is extremely good at making herself look attractive for me. She knows how to do it. She's so good. When I walk in the house, and she has had to put up with a lot more than a lot of women in this church or any community. Because when you're doing what I'm doing, I mean, yesterday, I didn't end up going home for lunch. She was expecting me. I had to say to her, I've got an emergency. Last night, had another emergency. And so I didn't go home for tea until quite late in the evening. And, but she was so gracious and so loving. And the romance is still there. Is what she does. Because she makes me feel like I'm needed. She makes me feel that way. Women, on the other hand, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. There's Venus up there. Are motivated and empowered when they feel cherished in a relationship. That's why flowers count. But I want to tell you guys, flowers won't keep doing it all the time. You know? When I first met Pauline, and I really got to like her, she was working in the bank at Lancaster Park beside the rugby of the greatest team in the New Zealand. And there she was working in the bank, and I knew her workmates actually had relationships that weren't particularly good. And I knew that when I sent Pauline flowers through into Flora, some of those girls got a bit jealous. But it made Pauline feel special. And I didn't send it because the girls were jealous. I only found that out later. But I used to send into Florida to Pauline, but you can't keep doing that the rest of your life, the same thing over and over again. It doesn't make a woman feel cherished if it's the same old boring. So how can we communicate more effectively? Because there's a danger. Men are cave people, women are talkathons. That's the nature of the two sexes, by and large. If you're different, I apologize, but you're strange. Men are like rubber bands. They need intimacy and autonomy. That's what they're like. Women are like waves. They need to be heard and understood. There's this continual thing. Men argue for the right to be free. Women argue for the right to be upset. What's the difference? It's true. Men want space. Women want understanding. And we need to recognize those things, because when we do, we're going to help each other. So what are the key ingredients in great romantic relationships? Well, the first thing is, I believe God wired us up to have the best relationships possible, but we need to untangle the mess in our wiring. You know, can I borrow two people just temporarily here? I'm going to borrow two people. Johnny and Sailor, I'm sure they won't mind. They're good sports. Hey, come on. I wouldn't do this to any guests. It's a family. I mean, Johnny's my son-in-law, and this is Sailor, our daughter. And they just got married not long, so the romance is still there. Is it still there? Oh, man, I shouldn't ask that, should I? Not publicly. No. Okay. Now, I want Johnny to stand over here just for a moment. And I want you to think about the difference between a man and a woman. You see, a man in his head, he's got a whole lot of little boxes. No, yes. A whole lot of boxes. And everyone's separate. There's a building box in there. There's a box that likes rugby. There's a box that really likes to mess around with his car sometimes. There's a box that gets highly annoyed with his vehicles that keep breaking down. There's boxes all through Johnny's head. And everyone's separate, and you daren't try and say they belong together or they're interlocked. They're all separate. There's the way a guy works. A woman, however, in her head, there's a tangled mess of wire. It is. And all the time, it's going like this. If you could listen to it, it'd be because all the time, the woman's mind is active. And they've shown this, they've proven this. Researchers stick probes on women's heads, men's heads, and they monitor them. You know the guy with his boxes? Unless he unlocks them, this is how much monitoring it shows on the screen. With a woman, the monitoring on the screen, no kidding, I've seen it. Goes all the time. Hardly ever does a woman's brain stop functioning. The man goes just quiet. You'd think he was dead. Honestly. And sometimes you imagine they're dead if you're the wife. You know? That's the truth. And I want to give these two a thanks for coming up here. Amen. Appreciation. You see, we need to look at it. So one of the things I want to suggest for every one of us, whether we're about to try and find a relationship, whether we're in the middle of a relationship, or whether we're married, doesn't matter what position we're in, I want us to do one thing. We need to check our attitudes at the door. Everything we do, we need to check our own attitude. See, the reality is, approaching romance from a selfish perspective is a dead-end street. If you're going there, and I want to say this, guys, you're awful at this. If you're going there to try and capture a girl with the wrong motives, if you're only looking for one thing that men look for, I want to say that's selfish, and the romance isn't romance. It's just out of control lust. And it can be called romance, and it can even feel nice. But did you ever know that sitting in the electric chair just before they push the button, the seat itself is quite comfortable? You're about to be in for a shock, though. And so romance, you've got to look at it, and you've got to realize if you're doing it for your benefit, then it's not romance. If you're doing it for the other person's benefit, and you're being romantic with no agendas, no selfish agendas whatsoever, you're out there to give to them, then you're going to make a difference. I want you to really think about that, because I think some people who are married, it's about them, not about the other person. And it needs to be about the other person. So really, what I'm saying is that romance is about giving. And as I said, it's not just about flowers. There are some key things I want to touch on. The first one is giving time. Giving time. We need to be people who are going to learn to set aside time. We need to set aside time for undivided attention. So don't say, let's go out with the kids every time. You may need to arrange a babysitter. You may need to give time which you think, oh man, I'm so busy, I've got so many things to do. I can tell you what, you make your wife or your husband or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever happy with the fact that you give them time. It makes life sweet. In fact, I remember those moments when I was courting Pauline. We'd sit on the steps in her mother's house, looking out at the garden which her father kept rather nicely, ogling into each other's eyes. We didn't care we're sitting on the steps, everybody else was trying to walk out. We were just there for each other, and it was kind of sweet. The only time it went badly wrong was when her mother walked out of the house and was going out and said, Pauline, I put some eggs on. Can you look after them? And she said, yes, Mum. About 20 minutes later, we smelt this horrible, stinky smell. And don't know whether you've ever seen black eggs, but I've always teased Pauline to this day that it was her fault. She burnt the eggs black. But really it was because we were so engrossed in each other. We were so there for each other that nothing in the world mattered. And I want to suggest that if you are being romantically involved and you get married, you've got to be able to do the same things. That's a continuation line. It's not get married and it all stops. If it all stops, you're not going to enjoy yourself in your marriage. You're probably not going to hang it out. You've got to be prepared to make time and set it aside. You need to spend a number of hours each week with each other, intentionally just being there, sitting with each other. The other night, Pauline wasn't feeling too good, and I was sitting watching some of the Olympics and surfing the channel onto another thing, which was a thing about China. I think it was on Prime TV. And as I was sitting there, one of the interesting things that happened, that Pauline just sat in my arms, and I discovered when I turned on the Olympics, there was tension in her body, and when I turned on the China, she sort of relaxed more against me. Guess which one I stuck with? For those of you who would have dived to the Olympics, phooey on you. Dumb. You don't have to see the Olympics. In fact, guys, you don't have to see the rugby. You can see it another time. Why is this obsession there that you have to watch it live? So people pay lots of money for Sky TV so they can watch a rugby game every now and again live. Why not record it and watch it when your wife's off doing something else? Or your boyfriend or girlfriend has got another activity. So we need to be people who are going to be giving time. The next one is we need to be people who are going to be giving effort. We need to be planning. There's Pauline and I, in case you know, I know you'd know it was us, wouldn't you? Because we still look about the same, don't we, really? No? You know how old we were there? We're actually 20, 21 years old, I think. that point. And I'm wearing a paisley shirt, guys. If you think that's wussy, I'll tell you now, paisley was in when I was young. All men of any decent courage and conviction and life wore paisley. Anybody else was just average nobodies. You know? You got it. You see, the truth of the matter is, I wanted to look really good for Pauline. And I knew the colours she liked. And you can tell I knew the colours she liked because I'm wearing the same colours as her. And she always loves the purples and those kind of colours. She's always been one for that. So you've got to be planning time. Second one is you've got to be surprising. Actually, one of the interesting things I found in my research, somebody you know fairly well because she's becoming famous with a little bit of prison time, is Martha Stewart. She has this great idea that she does. She's really creative. Here's her idea that she's giving free of charge, she says. She said she got a list of things that she needed to do to make something special. She got one old rowboat, a piece of paper, one envelope and one pen, one candle and one warm blanket. On a warm, sunny summer day, she said, write this note. Meet me at 10 o'clock or whenever it is. At the dock or at the lake or whatever. At 10 o'clock. Put the note in an envelope with instructions to be opened at 9:31 sharp. All right? Hand it to your wife as you leave the house in the morning with no explanation. So she's not allowed to open it to 9:31. She probably will open it earlier, but never mind. You see, the intent's there. When she arrives at the dock at 10 o'clock, your ever romantic self will be waiting in the old wooden rowboat with a lit candle at the bow, row around the lake in the moonlight, stopping in the middle to drift and chat. There's going to be no other disturbances out there as long as you don't tip the boat. You know, you've got to be surprising. You've got to be creative. You know, some of the things Pauline and I have done over the years in terms of our creativity. You know, we went and stayed over in Kenepuru Sound once, and we decided we'd get a little boat, and we got this boat and went right over. We found a little wee private beach where we could just sit there and talk to each other. Now, that only happened about 4 or 5 years ago. I've been married almost 34 years. We still do these things. We still love to be with each other. We still like to hold hands. You know, one of the hardest things I used to find when I first got married was holding hands. Because my mum and dad never did it. I was in for a huge shock when they got older and they suddenly, they moved to Accra, and it's a very romantic sort of place. They suddenly started holding hands. I didn't know how to cope with that emotionally. And then I suddenly realised I've been doing it for years with Pauline. Just that my mum and dad never did it. And, you know, we did all sorts of things. The very first date I took her out on, apart from the date that our mates arranged for us, we had this car rally, and all the guys teamed up, and they got all the churches in the Christchurch area, and they arranged it so Pauline and I were forced to be in the same car together. I was a driver, I had my car, she didn't have a car. And so they took off, and they all laughed for the rest of their days because they were arranging this marriage, and they got it. You see? So the next one, I took her out for a date to Lake Ida, ice skating. One of my favourite photos I've gotten. Unfortunately, we couldn't find it yesterday. I was going to show you it. It was her and I on the ice, on the ice skates. Lake Ida, we could skate a long way. It's a huge lake. And just skate and skate and skate on this lake. And, you know, I skated. Probably like this. Pauline was very graceful, you know. But I did my best. You know. But we had a great time. We were just together. And it's important, if you're going to be doing this, the surprising thing, sometimes one of the greatest things you can do is show gratefulness and reflect on those moments. And I've told Pauline time and time again about some of the special things that we did together, how important I think. Now, I don't just think about them, I tell her about them. Now and again, I've written her love notes. One of my friends, Jim Hearn, he's an older man. He's quite a lot older than me. And he writes little love notes all the time for his wife. He said he used to do it when he was single because I've changed in nature now because I'm married. And so one of the things he does, he speaks a lot at conferences and things all around New Zealand and overseas, so he's often not there. So he writes little notes and he sticks them all over the house where she'll find them. You know, he sticks one in the kitchen, just in the tea jar, and she opens a tea jar and it reads, "I love you, darling, have one for me." And so she finds that. And she goes to bed at night and she pulls out her nighties and out falls a bit of paper and a little note falls on the ground. She picks up and reads it and says, "I wish I were here." You know, that's romance. It's lovely. It's really, really special. You know, now not everybody's going to be good at doing that kind of thing. I'm not as good as him, but you know, we need to show some kind of gratefulness. Understanding the other's needs and likes is actually the key to actually making a great romance in your relationship. Understanding, that means you've got to be intentional, it means you've got to work at it. So, giving friendship. Be the best friend you know how. You can see this woman, she just looks so cute, you know, kind of thing. What was read out earlier today, perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and the pleasantness of one's friend springs from their earnest counsel. You know, when you're going to give each other support because you're being earnest about it, you're going to be there for them. You've got to be prepared to give. The next one is giving your ears. Giving your ears. The biggest thing that woman was talking about earlier was about this whole issue here. And part of it is the woman talks lots, but the guy doesn't listen much. In Proverbs it says this in the book in the Old Testament. It's foolish to answer before listening. Guys often don't listen, and sometimes women do the same thing. It's foolish to do that. This video here, great, this one worked.
After 40 years of marriage, I have to say a man can make it easier by listening to what his wife actually says. And not saying, you never told me that. I know every man on the planet says that. I know.
And I always say, I always listen.
Let a man know that she wants to talk in a way that is conducive to him opening up.
Give a man space to formulate a response and an answer.
Awesome, eh? Yeah. I want to ask this last question tonight. This morning, sorry. Felt like tonight before, didn't it? Is there such a thing as the divine marriage? Divine romance? Is there such a thing where God arranges it? Oh, some people would argue yes and some people would argue no. I want to say the marriage made in heaven idea is just a fallacy. God gives us the responsibility to make the marriage. We have free choices to who we marry. He doesn't even tell us who. These people tell me, God told me I had to marry such and such. I'm saying, don't blame God for the mistakes you're about to make. You know, that's the reality. You know, God actually tells us in the book of Corinthians in chapter 1 and verse 7 that we can choose to marry whom we want to marry. So if you get married and then think God made a mistake afterwards, no, God didn't make any mistakes. It's you that makes a mistake. So we need to think about that for a moment. So I want to finish with these last two slides. The first thing, set a mindset for the positive. You can see the cute look on her face and she knows what's about to happen. So here are some key things. Reflect on the good things you share. Reflect on the good things you share. You know, we have all sorts of good things we share. When we're traveling up to Auckland or up to Taupo or whatever, there's a little place on the desert road that Paulie and I just love to stop because you can go off the road and if you see a car there, go away. You can go off the road and nobody else around. It's a spectacular view just off the side of the road. You can see right down all these valleys that you can't see from the road. It's a spectacular place. And we just love to be there. There's all sorts of little things. Now, we got a little bit of land at the top of our property. that we own. And sometimes we just go and sit up there in the sun and just look out across the valley. It doesn't take great things. You don't have to spend lots of money. It's crazy. Why waste money when you don't have to? Sometimes good to invest it. Expect to be able to rejoice in the husband and wife of your youth. I love to tell Pauline, and this is something I do regularly. I say to Pauline, I'm holding her, I look at her and I sometimes grab her shoulders and say, you're the wife of my youth. And I'm still young. And we both have a laugh about that, but you know, but she is the wife of my youth. And I, you know, that came about through real romance. The next one, see noble character as a key in your partner's eyes. You need to develop who you are. Don't be so concerned about trying to develop who they are. You develop who you are and you develop a better character. The consequences are going to be great benefit for your relationship in the long term. Because when you change, they're going to want to change. But you know what human nature's like? If you try and tell somebody to change, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do the exact opposite. They're going to resist change. So it takes you to do it first. Second one, enjoy life. We often choose not to. We're told really clearly to enjoy life with the wife of our youth. In the Bible, one of the greatest books in the Bible is this book of Song of Solomon. It talks very deeply about the meaningful relationship and love that one should be able to share in. It talks about all the different things they do, and there's intention, you know, all the different descriptions of the creative things they do in their romance. And it's a book of true and very powerful romance of a couple who are married. You can tell that their pre-marriage stuff must have been pretty powerful. This is beautiful, beautiful description of romance. So enjoy life. We often choose not to. And then the last one. Recognize that absolute fulfillment comes in the context of reverence for God. We are designed, and I want to say this really straight up, we are designed by God to enjoy life the way He designed us to enjoy it. Not to enjoy it independent of Him. There's a Bible verse that says, 3 strands are not quickly broken. And it talks about in the context of that. And the 3rd strand, and Pauline and I find one of the most amazing things about a relationship is that God can get in our face. My wife doesn't have to get in my face about issues. She can ask God to help me. Because if she tries to get in my face, it doesn't always work. It does sometimes, but, you know. So, just briefly, I'll do a run through just for us to recapture. Make time to connect each day. Plan a date once a week. That's this whole thing about planning. So try and do that once a week, the planning thing. Greet each other at the end of the day. Woman, ladies, do yourself up if you're married. And if you're not married, you don't have to be told that, do you? When we were going out, Pauline was always dressed beautifully when she knew I was coming. If I surprised her, she might not have been looking so pretty. But if she knew I was coming, and you know the interesting thing is, guys dress up for the girls when they're trying to capture a girl. It's like fishing. They put the best bait on the hook. The only trouble is, you know what happens? Once they get married, they don't put anything on any hook. They think they've already got them hooked. You've got to watch it though, guys. If you play around the wrong way too long, the fish gets off the hook. And most women, you know, divorces actually are established mostly by women, not by men. There's over, I think it's 3 to 1, where the women actually make the decision for divorce. Greet each other every day. Do it well. Call each other every day. Just say hi. Text them or whatever. But just remember, emails and texts, 73% of those are misunderstood by the person receiving it. So don't go into lengthy ones. Just say, I love you. That's not misunderstood, except if it has an agenda. Don't have agendas. The next one, share the household responsibilities. I found that so hard because my culture background, the man didn't do anything. But you've got to do things. You've got to learn to do them. Play together. Play together. And if you're married, spice up your love making. There's all sorts of ways of doing it. No? touched on, it's not appropriate for me to go into that today. Come to one of our marriage courses soon and you'll get it. And the last one is pray together. Because praying together helps you draw closer to your spouse and allows you both to focus on what is truly important in marriage. It allows you both to focus what is truly important in marriage. I'd like to pray for us right now. And if you agree at the end, you can say amen. Father God, there's a range of us here. Some of us have had broken romances. Some of us have had destructive relationships that started off so beautifully. Some of us haven't managed to connect yet, and we need to be wise in the future. And some of us have even gotten married. And some of us have lost the romance that we started out with because we have been too self-centered. We have not thought well about what we're doing. We have not planned. And some of us are enjoying a great romance, and we want to thank you for that. But we all, God, need your help to make it even better. And we've offended you sometimes by the way we've spoken to each other, we've treated each other. We don't only offend the other person, but we offend you. And that's a bit scary to be on the wrong side of you. And so we would ask you to help us not to do that again. To live a different life. To live in a way where we can have real fun and real enjoyment. And forgive us for the times we've not even considered what you might be able to do to help us on the journey. So we'd ask your forgiveness for that. And we want to come to you today and say, Lord Jesus, we'd like to invite you to be part of our lives in every respect, including the romance. You made us so it could be beautiful. So help us to make it that way in Jesus' name. And all the people said, well, Lord bless you. Been a bit of fun, and it's been great having you. God be with you.